Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the June 18th, 2024 meeting of the Tompkins County Legislature. If you'd all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have the roll call of members, please?
Sharp has asked to be excused. Mike Sigler.
Here.
Shauna Black. Here. Brooks.
Here.
Randy Brown.
Here.
Amanda Champion.
Here.
Susan Curry.
Here.
Deborah Dawson's asked to be excused. Rich John.
Here.
Ann Corman.
Here.
Mike Lane.
Here.
Greg Mezzi.
Here.
Veronica Pillar. Dan Klein.
Here.
11 members present.
We have a quorum. Thank you. Presentation of proclamations. We do not have any tonight. Petitions, communications, and notices. All right. We will have one executive session, and I will announce what that is later on. I'm not aware of any reordering of business. Does anybody have any requests?
Dan, only that we take TC3 as promptly as we can.
That's good with me. Shall we do that before privilege of the floor or after?
It's your choice.
I'm going to stick with the agenda then for now. So we are up to privilege of the floor then. This is the time for members of the public to speak with us. If you're interested in speaking, please go to the back of the room, grab one of these blue forms, go ahead and fill it out and bring it on up. I'm going to read the rules for speaking under privilege of the floor. I agree to a 3-minute time limit. I agree not to raise my voice. I agree not to use lewd, obscene, profane, slanderous, or libelous language, or speak or act in a manner that would tend to incite a breach of the peace. I agree not to speak about county personnel matters. Personnel matters include comments about the job performance of named county employees other than elected officials. After 3 minutes, I agreed to leave the microphone and yield the floor. Transferring time to another person is not permitted. I agree to be courteous and not make comments, gestures, outbursts, or other disruptions while other members of the public or legislators are speaking. I agree that if I cause a disruption and am asked to leave, I will leave the chambers. Zach Wynn, you're on.
Good evening. My name is Zach Wynn. I live here in the city. I understand that there are updates to the county's tobacco use policy as well as a cannabis-free work environment policy before the legislature this evening. The resolution regarding tobacco mentions, quote, the accumulated weight of scientific studies that document the harm to public health from exposure, unquote, to tobacco. I have noticed there is no similar language describing the potential harms from marijuana, harms which are not exclusive to the drug itself, but also the way it is cultivated. I would like to request that language reflecting the potential negative effects of marijuana be included in the cannabis-free work environment resolution. While not carcinogenic like tobacco, there are a number of negative health effects of marijuana that are fairly well documented, including the triggering of schizophrenia, inducing of panic attacks, and psychotic episodes. As tobacco attacks the body, marijuana attacks the mind. Additionally, I'd like to address something relating to marijuana I spoke about yesterday at the Health and Human Services Committee meeting, so if it is redundant information, please forgive me. I have forwarded an article about dangerous levels of pesticide that have been detected in marijuana in California. There's a great deal of marijuana available locally that can be purchased under the table or from dealers that lack the testing and oversight of official retailers. The pesticides are also found in marijuana vape products, with the pesticides concentrated into a form that is directly inhaled. I have seen some of the brands mentioned in the article for sale here in town. I think it would be beneficial if the county could develop some testing capacity to find out if the contamination discussed in the article is present here locally. The technical capacity to do this testing may already exist, and if it does not, partnering with Cornell might be a possibility. I am sure people would like to know if the local marijuana supply was contaminated. Getting people to come forward with samples would not be as difficult now that marijuana itself is not criminalized. I know some people who have developed strange symptoms after using some of the marijuana sold under the counter, and I have heard coughs that were unlike anything I have encountered before. The effects of the pesticides discussed in the article, many of them banned in the United States, have severe health consequences. And I have noticed the public service announcements on the TCAT regarding marijuana and young people. Similar PSAs regarding pesticide and mold contamination of the illicit marijuana supply, if it is found, would be beneficial to the public. Thank you.
We don't have any other blue cards. Are there any other members of the public who wanted to speak tonight? Not seeing anyone else. Greg, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just really quick. The email that was sent to us with the link, I think, to the article that was just referenced is, I think, behind a paywall. I just didn't know if there was a way, if it could be shared in a PDF or some other form, unless I saw that wrong.
There were 2 links. I think they're to the same article, but one is not paywalled.
Okay, I will get with my colleague to work on that. Thank you. I just want to make sure I saw the right article. Thanks, sorry.
Thank you. No problem. Next up, privilege of the floor for municipal officials. I see Pierre St. Perez from the city of Ithaca here. Welcome, Pierre.
You guys don't have an escape from me.
I don't think we want one.
Well, as always, good to see you all on this quite hot day. In terms of updates on goings on in the city, I'll save the big thing that I suspect you're all going to ask me questions about for last. So we are considering an internal reorganization of our information and clerk's office. This is just something that we're working on in order to allow us to, better integrate technology into how we approach those subjects, do it more efficiently. That should be interesting. And now to the main thing, we have discussed and are having a public hearing on Thursday, opting into New York State's good cause eviction law. And the public hearing is on Thursday. We're not meeting tomorrow because it is Juneteenth. Following that, we are scheduled to vote on that at the beginning of July, most likely, our first meeting of July. Am I missing anything? No, I think that's the core of what we have been doing. Hit me with any questions.
Amanda.
I'm going to ask a random question not related to that. What's going on with the Department of Public Works and fixing some of the roads around here? I'd love to see some things happening on the west side.
So the order of prioritization of road construction is handled within DPW. They have a system. And my understanding is that as the summer progresses, we should all see a lot more roads being repaired. There's a lot, as I think any of us who drive around the city know, there's a lot to work with. But they are on it, and there is as I understand it, a very comprehensive plan for the summer and how road construction over the summer is going to look. I will say, I am anticipating a lot of detours as I drive around town this summer. And I'd warn everyone else to also anticipate that.
All right. I look forward to construction on West Hill.
Mike Sigler.
To dovetail off what you just said, it's my understanding the city, the Public Works is very understaffed. It's having trouble finding people, and that it's actually subcontracted out a lot of that paving work. Is that the case to private companies and things like that?
So I would frame it slightly differently.
Okay.
The amount of resources that we are putting into roads is beyond the capacity of our current public works staff. So yes, some of that, to my memory, is being contracted out. Don't get me wrong, the city does have staffing issues in various departments, but to my memory, road repair is not one of them. And again, that's my memory. I could be off.
Rich.
Thanks, and thanks for coming and talking with us on good cause eviction.
I love it. This is fun.
Okay, well, maybe you won't like my question, but on good cause eviction, has the city met with the assessment department or considered the potential impact on assessed values of rental units? Because it seems like if you're going to make it more difficult to rent properties, landlords who are not able to make their properties financially viable are going to line up outside of the assessment department. And this will have impacts on the county and the school district as well as the city because you're going to change the tax base. If that occurs, has that been considered and studied?
I do not know. A lot of the process involving just cause being adopted in the city did not occur during the current council, which has led to some of us who are newer members not having full knowledge of everything that was discussed and gone through previously. I can't say that is something I have thought about personally.
Okay.
But I simply don't know if those conversations have happened or not.
Is there a reason this needs to be voted on in July? It seems like something that you really want to make sure you're getting right rather than getting.
I think the core concern, and I'm sure some other people can speak to this, but that's the beginning of another rental cycle. There are people in the city that are going to be facing eviction, most likely, at the end of July.
Well, not eviction, but just no renewal, you're saying?
Or a lack of renewal, yes.
Randy.
Yes, thank you. We received a report that in the cleanup of the area between State Street and Cherry Street, part of the jungle, I guess you refer to it, was that the city collected over 200 tons of garbage and other material and took it to our recycling center, and they said that process went well. So I just wanted to share that with you. But I was wondering what your process is now that that part is cleaned up. Is there a plan to continue to keep it cleaned and to stop that process from happening again?
Not to sound like a broken record, but I don't know. I have confidence that staff is thinking about this and working on it, but council at least hasn't been briefed.
Okay. I have a second question. So you may not know the answer to this either. So we also received a report that we have 2 landfills that the county still has to manage and own, and leachate is created there, millions of gallons a year. And the county received a price increase on March 1st without any notification, and it went up 317%. I'm not saying that it may not have been justified, but I'm just sharing with you it's obviously going to raise our costs significantly, I think $190,000 or something like that this year. It'd be nice to have known in advance that those types of things are happening, so I wanted to share that with you in case you didn't know.
I appreciate that.
Veronica.
Sorry, Pierre, this is more for Rich, but
Go for it.
about the good cause eviction, well, one, anything you or I say might be better suited to Thursday's public hearing, but I think Pierre got it right on like why this is urgent. It's because for people, it could be the difference between being housed and unhoused on this lease cycle, but also it has been this bill has been debated in Ithaca for a long time and then debated in Albany for a long time, and now it's back here. But the thing about, you said something about good cause eviction making it harder to rent out properties or to make the value worth it. I don't know. I forget your words, but like, I think you're jumping 2 steps ahead. It's not known or even necessarily suspected that good cause lease renewal protections will make it harder for property owners to get the income they need in rent, specifically because rent increases commensurate with inflation plus more, I think, are allowed. And also, if someone is not paying the rent, that is considered a good cause to evict or non-renew. So, yeah.
So, Rich, I'll let you respond, but I just want to remind you this is privilege of the floor for elected municipal officials, not for our debate.
Yeah, my concern arises because the city will be imposing artificial constraints on rents in the city. And if you're going to do that, you better make sure you're right. And you say it won't be a problem. I don't know if that's true or not. I hope it isn't. But if it is, you're going to have a line outside the assessment department because assessed values of rental properties are based upon income. And if the income makes these properties non-financially viable, we will have a serious problem at the county and the city and the school district. I'd just like to make sure that we're doing this right and that they're recognizing the impacts they could have on other municipalities. Hope you're right. Yeah.
Greg.
I'm glad my 2 colleagues have already taken up the debate, but I was just hoping to jump in here and look forward to seeing you on Thursday. I echo some of Rich's concern, but mostly around, I would rather go into this knowing that Ithaca got it right rather than trying to rush something through. There's a few things that, just to point out, that buildings constructed after 2009 are protected for 30 years against, they're exempt from this. And that's under state law. I don't know if that's planning to change in Ithaca's.
So if I may, as I understand it, we are just opting into the state law. We're not drawing up our own bespoke version, nor really could we. What we are allowed to do under state law here is opt into their system. So it's going to be what it looks like.
Yeah. I hear that, and just so everybody knows, the rent figures is 10% or 5% plus inflation measured by the Consumer Price Index, the lower of the 2. But a landlord is able to appeal that if they feel the units justify. My question is, in the city of Ithaca, who are they going to appeal that to? Do you have the infrastructure and the system and the staff structure set up in place? And these are why I think it would make sense to slow the train down a little bit, get the details right. There is a little bit of alteration from the state based on the information that's out there in the public. So there is some bespoke tweaking that's taking place at the city. I would just urge you to really make sure before you set out on a vote or your colleagues set on a vote to get as much of the information as possible and fully look at the whole picture. I 100% support and value the idea of tenant protections and tenants' rights. But I also think that there are some times where those can be abused and misused, and ultimately then the landlord or property owner has to pay for those. I guess I would ask you also to consider, if there is an issue, are you looking at some sort of landlord assistance or pool of funds or something like that that could also support landlords through this process, right? So there's a number of different issues that I would encourage you to look at so that you have a full picture and it's just not a one-sided conversation. And I guess that's my piece. I'll say it again on Thursday. But I think it's important to get this right and understand that this has a significant economic impact and it has a significant human impact. And those things need to be weighed and debated. And it should be in this council if this council is making the decision and not rely on the work of previous councils.
I mean, one of the quirks here is that because of the order of how things go in our meetings, any of you who come to the hearing will have the opportunity to address council about this before I will have the opportunity to tell them your concerns.
Any other questions for Pierre? Thank you again for coming.
Of course.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you.
I don't think there are any other municipal officials in the room. No? Okay. Next up is legislator privilege of the floor. Shauna.
Thank you, Dan. I had the honor to attend the annual NISAC board meeting in the Adirondacks, and I wanted to bring back some information to my colleagues as well as some of our department heads. I did put in everyone's mailbox. Westchester County actually sends out this form here to all of their county residents. And I find it really helpful because it actually describes what county government does. It talks about where their property taxes are going, gives a nice little pie chart. And then it talks about, like, line for line in their departments where all of their tax money's going. So I would love for this to be a conversation in our budget discussions. It would be really great and super transparent to our constituents if we could get something out in the mail after we vote on our budget. But I did want you guys to take a look. I'm pretty positive that Dominic could do something actually probably much better than this. But I think it's helpful. I did have a few other things to report. As far as the second thing was make sure to get out and vote. The ICSD budget, I believe Newfield is actually up on the vote tonight, so please get out and vote. And then I did want to get back to the NISAC board meeting. There were some information on the state budget. They are reviewing Tier 6 pension right now. They're realizing that it's not attractive to new people that are looking to work in government. And so they are going to lower the threshold for calculating the final average salary from 5 years to 3 years. They're also going to enhance the money that they're putting into Tier 6 and that they're going to start offering people. So hopefully that will lead to increased recruitment. There were no new significant direct cost shifts to counties. There was going to be $85 million for new partnership programs with counties on public safety communication systems. So I know that's something that we're probably going to be investing in. Also, as far as public safety, this coming up year, the funding is going to double to the GIVE grant increase. So hopefully we will see some of that money trickle down from $36 million to $72 million. They're also going to, currently they're funding alternatives to incarceration at $5.2 million, and they're actually going to increase that to $31 million. So it would be nice. I know that we have a lot of ATIs in our community. It'd be awesome if we can get some of that funding. The ARPA funds, just a reminder, they have to be obligated by 2024, fully spent by 2026. And one thing that they mentioned is that those ARPA funds can be used for salaries. That's something that had changed from the previous guidelines they had sent forth, with the caveat that depending on who is elected in November to be our president, that could change. So if we're going to allocate the money, we need to do it now while the rules are still in place, because all of the guidelines could be off the tables if there's another person in charge. So, and then let's see here. I think that was basically it, but I did want to share that information with you. The last thing was the REM foreclosures. Most of the counties that are in New York State are being sued by class action lawsuits. And this is something that is a big conversation because the homeowners could have access to all of the profit that perhaps the county might have received. And so right now, counties are asking to be held harmless and for the state to pick up the tab on that. So I'll keep you posted if I hear anything else. So.
Thank you for that excellent report, Shauna.
Sure.
Ann.
Thank you, Dan. Two things. First off, for municipalities or organizations, if you haven't heard about the New York State Consolidated funding application workshop. It's going to be a local one, which is rare that we're going to have folks from around the state talking to us about that and helping guide folks through on applying for grants. And that's at Cinemapolis on the 20th of this month, 3 to 5, and you can go to the Regional Economic Development Council. It's on their website, or you can also call 607-721-8605 to register ahead of time. And the other thing I just wanted to bring up is a little show and tell, and for folks who have seen me bring before packaging that's either really hard to open or it's just full of plastic and things like that. So I wanted to show some better packaging, and so there's actually more than one reason why I like my new Dyson vacuum, including instead of putting big pieces of foam in there, I'm going to pass some of these around because they've actually done, I would call it origami with cardboard, of the way that they can take a little bit of cardboard and make it really sturdy. And so my Dyson vacuum came, no damage to the box because it's really sturdy in there. And so I'm going to pass this around, how they make all kinds of different pieces, where different parts go. It's just folded cardboard. It's amazing. So I'm going to pass some of this around, and different ways that they protect your pieces. So this is just really cool. I know I complain a lot about packaging, but as we're pushing towards New York State to have more environmentally friendly packaging, it can be done. I mean, this is just cardboard, but they really did a good job on that. So I just wanted to bring that up. And so thanks to Dyson.
Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I wanted to take a minute to share some sad news, but also celebrate the life of a Dryden resident, Bob Beck, who was 82 and passed away Friday, June 14th, unexpectedly. Bob was one of the founding members, one of the founding members of the Finger Lakes Land Trust, a lifelong conservationist, and has a lasting legacy in the town of Dryden. A member of our conservation board, but also chair and led the Dryden Rail Trail Task Force. And so the reason we have the length of trails, the access to a multimodal gem like that in our community is because of the work and dedication that Bob put into bringing that to reality. So just wanted to take a minute to remember him and his contributions to our community, because he definitely was someone that has a lasting legacy with our community in getting outdoors and making sure that we protect natural spaces, and we encourage people to get out there and just enjoy being outside. So just wanted to remember Bob Beck today.
Rich.
I wanted to note the Special Olympics were held this past weekend, and by all accounts, it was a great success. I've volunteered in the past, but I did not this weekend. My wife did, because I had signed up to be one of the volunteers for the airport emergency drill, and my colleague Veronica Pillar was there with me. We got to be victims. I think we're both fully recovered at this point, but it was a remarkable drill. They simulated an airplane crash, and did the call outs, and so the emergency services at the airport responded first, but then, ambulances and fire trucks came from all over the county. They had to do the triage and put people out on mats. As it turns out, my injury was I was unconscious, so they had to carry me, which they did, out and put me on a mat on the ground and, sorted out what was going on. In the midst of this, there was a Boy Scout troop of volunteers, and I can tell you, one of those kids was really on his game. He was screaming and moaning so realistically for how long, Veronica?
I don't know, on and off for an hour plus. And then having to explain to the responders that his injury is worse than it seemed because some of the moulage they put on us had fallen off in the bus.
Moulage is makeup that they put on everybody to show injuries. And some of them were very realistic and upsetting. But anyway, it was a great drill. Very glad they did it, and I wanted to say thank you to all the first responders that came out and really worked it. It was very impressive to see.
Norma got impaled, too, speaking of impressive injuries. So if the budget process is struggling, that's our excuse.
You know, and I'd also say there were many county employees that volunteered from all different departments to come out. It was really fun. So,
Veronica.
For folks who live in the Ithaca City School District or Newfield School District, there are more, I don't know if you call it an election, but there's more voting today on budget proposals again. I think polls are open till 9, so if you haven't voted, please go out and do it. I see a few I voted stickers on my colleagues, not on me because I've had to shower since then because today is terrible. And tomorrow, as someone said, is Juneteenth, and this is a reminder that our Office of Human Rights is co-hosting a celebration at Southside from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. There will be food, a keynote speaker, a Black Business Expo, a Juneteenth reenactment, and maybe more things.
Mike Lane.
Greg mentioned about the untimely passing of Bob Beck. I'll just would add to that Bob was, even before the trails and things like that he was involved in, he was the person who was the mover and shaker to preserve the O.D. Von England Nature Preserve in Malloryville, which is a unique, very unique place left over from glaciation, and he did a great job. We lost 2 other folks in our area. One was Buzz Levine, who had been on the Dryden Town Planning Board for many years. His wife, Linda, had served on the Dryden Town Board. They were very interested in things like fracking in Tompkins County and protecting Dryden from industrialization and hydrofracking. It's easy for me to say. So Buzz will be missed. He was also a real estate agent. The other one I wanted to mention, and I don't think I'd had to do this if Lee Shurtleff had been here tonight, but Lee couldn't be here, but we lost Dewey Dawson in Groton. Dewey had been with our Tompkins County Sheriff Department, I think I read 27 years. And as a deputy, and served there. And after that, he became a town justice in the town of Groton and served for over 20 years as town justice over there. He was very committed to the Tompkins County Magistrates Association. I've attended functions, been invited by the magistrates to them, and they were always something educational was what was going on at those meetings. So I just wanted to add those 2 sad things to our memory here, and we'll think about them.
Mike, did you want to say anything about our pre-show event?
Oh, glad to. Just before this meeting, we had a birthday party for Daniel D. Tompkins, it was his 250th birthday. Governor Tompkins, born down in Westchester County, served as governor of New York from 1807 through 1817, and he also became vice president under President Monroe, serving 2 terms. We really appreciate him as our governor, and he was very popular, and I've said several times we probably would be Canadian, but for his efforts as governor to firm up the militia, supply it, and have it on the New York border during the War of 1812. So we had a lot of people in. Carol Cammon spoke in the absence of our county historian, who was unable to be there. Laura would have liked to have been there to speak. We also had Senator Leah Webb that came in and spoke and gave us a proclamation about Daniel Tompkins. So it was a nice time. We had some birthday cake, and there's still some over here if people want some.
Thanks, Mike. Randy.
Yes, thank you. We like the people in Canada, and we're lucky to have them to our north. Just want to share that. And thanks for bringing up the budget vote. Newfield's unique in that about 2/3 of their budget comes from state funding. So it's a good, for every dollar you vote locally, you get 2 more. So Ithaca's not quite that lucky.
Do you mean the schools?
Newfield?
The schools?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Newfield Central School, yes, gets about 2/3 of its funding from the state. But I did go to the Special Olympics, and my daughter volunteered as well, and I ran into Rich's wife. A lot of volunteers. They had a lot of good volunteers. But I also wanted to thank the sheriff and the state police. They were there, and they were cheering the kids on, and at the awards, high-fiving the kids, and the kid taking pictures with every kid who got an award. So I just want to thank our sheriff and the state police for that. I think it meant a lot. So.
Are there any other legislators that wanted to speak under privilege of the floor? Okay, next up is the chair's report. I want to mention that the legislature is skipping its first meeting in July, as we've been doing the last 5 or 6 years. So our next legislature meeting won't be until July 16th. And then I wanted to read a short thing that I had written. I hope you find it amusing and not disrespectful. Daniel D. Tompkins was the 6th Vice President of the United States. And including Daniel Tompkins, there were 9 vice presidents born in New York, the most from any state. That is the only fact of substance that I'm going to say here. The rest are just a few light observations. I once had a semi-secret fantasy of role-playing Daniel Tompkins in some kind of local historical event. I did a small amount of research about him to see if I might be good for the role. One statement I came upon was that Daniel Tompkins is widely considered to be the most handsome vice president. That was pretty much the end of my research. I found that phrase very funny, and it did start a few interesting discussions with my colleagues about which vice president might be more attractive than Daniel Tompkins. I always thought Al Gore or Dan Quayle could easily give Daniel Tompkins a run for his money for the title of most handsome vice president. It's been said that Washington, D.C. is Hollywood for ugly people. The number of articles and references I found to politicians' appearances suggests that looks do matter in Washington, D.C. At the website hottestheadsofstate.com, that is a real website, you will find Daniel Tompkins ranked at number 35 out of the 47 vice presidents who had existed when the list was made. In a BuzzFeed article entitled, "All 47 Vice Presidents Ranked by Hotness," our namesake comes in at number 41, almost at the bottom of the list. What should we make of Daniel Tompkins' mixed rankings? Did he initially rate well because he had only 5 other vice presidents to compete against? Is it just that fashions change over time? Is it as simple as beauty is in the eyes of the beholder? Could party affiliation affect who we find attractive? I will leave those questions to some more serious researchers. The only other thing that I want to say about Daniel Tompkins is to thank him for his name. I find the name Tompkins pleasant. Had we been named after a different vice president, I might now be speaking to the Van Buren County Legislature, or worse, the Agnew County Legislature. So happy 250th, Daniel D. Tompkins. I do not care how you looked. I am sure that you had a great personality.
Dan, can we ask that those be submitted in their entirety to the minutes, just for historical sake?
That's only one legislator asking.
Without objection.
I will request that. Thank you. Next up, special topical presentation from Tompkins Cortland Community College 2024-2025 operating budget presentation by Amy Kremenik, President, Tompkins Cortland Community College. Welcome, come on up. You can be here or you can sit at the desk if you want, whatever works for you.
Where would you prefer?
Where would we prefer?
We can go back down to the...
Why don't you sit down at the desk, you'll probably be more comfortable. Yeah.
Bless you. Right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to be here to speak to you about the college. We're going to present an update on TC3 as well as the 24-25 board-approved operating budget for the college. As we start, I would like to recognize a couple of our board members who are in the audience. First, Judy Davison. She is the board chair for the college, also a 1970 alumna, so we count her as one of our own in so many ways. She is a Cortland County appointee. Next to Judy is Roxanne Buck. Roxanne Buck is a longtime member of the board, as well as the college's representative to the New York State Community College Association of Trustees. And then next to her is Sue Dale Hall, who is 2 years now, I think, on the board, and both Roxanne and Sue are appointees of Tompkins County. So I would like to thank both of them for being, or all three of them, excuse me, for being here this evening to support our presentation. So thank you. And then next to me on my left is Dennis Panagidis, and Dennis is the college's comptroller, as well as a resident of Ithaca. So he's with me here tonight, and he's going to speak specifically on the financials. We did distribute a copy of the presentation, so if you've not received one, please let us know, and we can bring one to you. So to begin, I do want to start with enrollment. As I've said, so goes enrollment, so goes the college. That's why we exist, to educate students, to provide degrees and certificates, micro-credentials, and so we've been really closely tracking on enrollment. You may be familiar that we've enjoyed 4 consecutive semesters of increased enrollment, and currently for fall, in particular, one area that we are watching closely is our continuing student population. So essentially, students who were with us in the spring, who are eligible to be with us again in the fall, meaning largely they've not graduated or they've not transferred to another institution. And that number at this point is tracking up by 16%. And this bodes very well for our retention. We do track closely our core student enrollment. Many of you, I think, are familiar with our high school population. We have the largest concurrent enrollment program in the state, but we really watch closely our core students, and this would be those who you might traditionally think of as college students, meaning those who come to campus or take classes online, but they are high school graduates by that point. That population, we are budgeting up 4%. Our applications for 24-25 are currently on par with where we were last year. More importantly, where we are seeing increases is in acceptances, because we've made a number of changes to the process to help make it easier for students to get in the door. We believe that the hard part for students should be what's happening in the classroom, not the process it takes to get into college. And then finally on this slide, we have made some investments with the support of this county, as well as Cortland County, in enrollment services and also in marketing to help ensure that the student growth that we've enjoyed over the past 4 semesters is sustained. So this graph here is, I'm sure, very hard for everyone to see. So I'm going to refer to my packet. This is, I believe, the 3rd page. This is where we are in terms of core enrollment. Again, this is traditional college students from enrollment trends in full-time equivalent. This is how we are funded by the state. So this is obviously critically important to us, and we're going to talk in a moment in terms of how our revenue is divvied out percentage-wise. But you can see certainly 2017-18 is that graph, the bar on the far left, where we were in terms of full-time equivalent enrollment, and you can definitely see the bottoming out as we got into the pandemic years as well as 21-22, and that's really where things started to turn around. The pandemic, and I think I've said this before here, was no friend to community colleges and to community college students. Our students were disproportionately affected. They're largely low-income students, students of color, students who were working in places that essentially shut down, and that disproportionately affected them. And community colleges across the country are still digging their way out of the pandemic. TC3 has, though, as I said, started to see enrollment increases again, which is very welcome. The next slide is core enrollment. So as I mentioned, full-time equivalent is how we are funded by the state. That does not take into account the number of heads, if you will. So we are seeing increased numbers of part-time students, and a full-time equivalent student could be made up of 2 part-time students, 3 part-time students, depending on how many credits each of them are taking. But where we are watching here in this graph is essentially head count. So regardless of the number of credit hours that someone is attending the college, we are still counting them as, if you will, an individual head. And so here you can see that we are starting to see some increases back to levels that were close to the beginning of the pandemic. Our goal is to get back to, and I will acknowledge the board in so many ways on this, that they want to see us back to 2019-20 levels ASAP, and so we've been focused very much there. But the other thing that I think is notable in this graph is that if you look at the blue part, the blue column, that is full-time students, and the orange column is part-time students. And of course, the gray is the 2 of them together. But you may notice that what we're seeing is increasing numbers of part-time students, and that's bearing out this year. Right now, our enrollment is tracking up 11% in terms of part-time students and essentially flat in terms of full-time. While it's good in terms of head count, the challenge with that is that we provide services to students regardless of how many credit hours they are enrolled for. So all of our students have access to our student counseling center, to obviously financial aid processing, to our food pantry, to all of the services and programs we offer. We don't ration that based on the number of credit hours that a student is enrolled for. We treat all students equally. The next graph is our enrollment by region. This is always of interest. People are always asking, where does your enrollment come from? So in this pie graph, the largest portion is blue, and that represents our sponsoring counties. So these are students who are coming to TC3 from either Cortland County or from Tompkins County. So you can see that's the largest proportion of students which we want, and I'm certain you would expect. The orange is the donut counties. We call it the donut because if you think of the 2 counties in the center, this is all the contiguous counties that surround us, and that makes up about, I would say, about a quarter of that pie. And then from there, we have students who are coming to us from other parts of the state, downstate. We do have a small international population, but as you can see really here, the largest proportion of our students are local from one of our 2 counties, or in second would be those coming from the donut counties surrounding us. I do want to give an update on some of our new programs, our micro-credentials, which I think many of you are familiar with. These are programs that are anywhere from 9 to 12 credit hours. This college has invested in credit-bearing micro-credentials. Some colleges have micro-credentials, but they are non-credit. We deliberately made the decision that we wanted credit for 2 reasons. One is that it allows them to stack into our associate degrees, so that if a student does decide to continue, those credit hours are not for naught, if you will. It also makes them financial aid eligible, which is something I'm sure we would all agree is a good thing for students. So two areas that I'd like to particularly highlight in terms of microcredentials. One is the direct support provider 1 and 2. This is a program specifically designed for individuals, professionals that work with individuals with developmental disabilities. And so we were funded by OPWDD, the Office of Persons with Developmental Disabilities, to develop this program in conjunction with local employers. The cohort is full, and the first cohort just completed, again, those DSP1 and DSP2 microcredentials, which also for them came with an increase in pay that was sponsored by their employers. The employers have asked us for a DSP3. They like the training and the additional education that their employees are getting, and so they've asked us to create a DSP3 microcredential, and that currently is pending approval. I would also like to just mention the Geographic Information Systems microcredential, or GIS. This is a new one that has been brought to our attention by local employers who want to see people who are well-versed in mapping technology, data analysis for a number of industries locally. So this one is currently pending, and hopefully we'll have approval on it this fall. And then finally, the health professions are obviously significant, and something that we all want to see is more health professionals in our community. There are many, many jobs in this area. TC3 has a fairly large nursing program. We have 165 slots, which for a college our size is pretty significant. But there are also many health professions that require more than an associate's degree. We produce RNs through the associate degree program, but there are many many professions that require more than an associate's degree. So our faculty have been working on an AS, or Associate of Science program in the health sciences, which will allow students to do their first 2 years with us and then create the freshman and sophomore year required for a bachelor's degree, and then transfer on for their junior and senior year. One institution, a sister institution for us, is SUNY Upstate Medical University. They have 15 bachelor's completion programs for students who complete associate degrees like the Health Sciences AS, which we think that will help fill those jobs for local people who can go on to Upstate and then come back here to take jobs in our local facilities. And so this will be, I think, a big area of interest for students. Health is the top area that we receive applications for right now. We have almost 450 applications for nursing. I love nursing, but we also need to have some other options for students, and so I think this is a step in the right direction. And then finally, and then I'm going to turn it over here to Dennis, I just want to talk for a moment about workforce development, which I know is an area that is very important to all of you as well. We have a new program in microelectronics and nanomanufacturing. It's a certificate program that's being offered in conjunction with Penn State University and the Cornell Nanoscale facility. We're one of about a dozen community colleges across the country that are partnered with Penn State on this. And one of the most important aspects of this is that it provides this training for veterans and their families at no charge. And so we feel that this is an opportunity not only to fill a local workforce need, but also to help support individuals who've served in the military and honor that service. We have received funding also from SUNY for an internship fund to help students take unpaid or low-paid internships. One of the biggest challenges that community college students have, because the vast majority of our students work full-time often, and they're also full-time students, but they just cannot afford to step away from paid work in order to take an unpaid internship, even though we all know that an internship can really help them be successful in the job market. We receive some grant funding through SUNY that allows us to provide stipends to students who are taking internships that otherwise would be unpaid. And that really expands the pool of students who can participate in internships, particularly students who are already resource challenged, which we think is most important to the work we're trying to do. We have a Tourism Pathways Grant, which I know is important to Tompkins County, certainly the tourism industry. This is through the Southern Tier 8 and the Appalachian Grant Program. We're partnered with them on that through our culinary and our hospitality management program. The OASIS, we have scholarships now for alcohol and substance abuse counseling. We do have an associate's degree program in alcohol and substance abuse counseling, but the CASAC credential is something that often employers are looking for. They want CASAC certified counselors on their staff. This is the Credentialed Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Counselor. That's what CASAC stands for, and we now have scholarships for that purpose again. That is also provided through a grant program. And aside from all of these types of programs that offer specialized opportunities for students in various industries, we also do a great deal of work through our Workforce Development Office on career development workshops that are open not only to our own students and alumni, but also to individuals in the community. And so we host job fairs on our campus very frequently, and I can say that they are very, very well attended, both from our own students as well as people in the community. We also did a very good career exploration fair last fall that I think was probably one of the best attended events on campus, where employers came not necessarily to be there to collect resumes, although they were willing to do that, but to really talk with students about the types of job opportunities that are available in their companies, in their organizations, because oftentimes our students may not be aware of all the opportunities that are out there, and to get them thinking about these options. And then all told, with our own students on campus, we have impacted over 400 students with on-campus programming activities and events, and those numbers are collected regularly by our Workforce Development Office. And so we'll continue that. It's a critical piece of the work we do, particularly at the community college. So I'll turn it over to Dennis, and he can talk about the finances and the budget.
Hello. I would like to start with presenting a few things about the budget. The first two slides are a depiction of our revenues and expenditures for the year 2024-25. As you see on this slide, this is an analysis of our revenue for the year, for the coming year. Traditionally, community colleges in the state of New York and the SUNY system have been funded in a model of 1/3 from the state, 1/3 from the local county, and 1/3 paid by the students. Of course, these things started in the 40s and 50s. It has changed since then. The state have taken a larger portion over the years. They went up to about 40%. And since the 90s, we've seen a decline in the portion that the state have been able to fund community colleges. And we come to the point that, as you see right now, they're funding about 28% of our budget. 30% of our budget comes from the two counties and the chargeback income that we have from the rest of the New York state counties. And as you can see, that about 37% goes to our students, and this is sad because we have to charge them the highest amount. We have been very responsible handling our revenue, and we're working hard in order to get the students to drop their share of the revenue. The next slide has to do with our expenses. As you can see, the vast majority of our expenses, over 70%. You see the light blue portion on the right and the darker blue portion on the top is our wages and benefits, which sum up to about over 70% of our budget. You see there is a small amount of about 9% that's scholarships that we give to high school students, and then less than 20% is all of the rest of our contractual expenses. It's a very difficult to drop our expenses, to figure out ways. We have to provide the services, and we have to have all of our employees to do that. So it's been a difficult equation for us to figure out ways to improve our budget. The next slide is a 10-year sponsor aid from Tompkins County. As you can see, it starts with the year 2013-14 and goes to 22-23. Your contributions have been critical for our success. They started at a little under $2.8 million, and as you can see right now, we have gone over $3 million, and we really appreciate all your contributions to our college. After that, I have a slide about recent developments we had in our facilities. We've had brand new labs coming funded mostly from big, about $2.5 million grant from New York State. Those have been finalized, and right now we received an additional $800,000 from SUNY to add critical equipment in our labs. We have been working the last 2 years in our network, in our computer network. Our IT department has been developing security, and we have been working with several companies like ComSource. We have been making critical investments in public safety, such as security cameras. We have been working with our small police department in order to improve our public safety. We have been having a new master plan for our facilities. We have started this process this month right now, and we're hoping to get something going very soon in order to have to plan for the future. We have made some critical hires, such as a new director of facilities, and we're working with the state and our local counties, Tompkins and Cortland, in order to develop a deferred maintenance program. We're having a new deferred maintenance committee in order to go along with all that. And obviously we have to be planning for our over-target requests to the 2 counties in order to finance some of our deferred maintenance and other projects for the college. The last 2 slides have to do with the budget. I have some very high level comments to make. So we have been budgeting for an incremental enrollment increase of 4% for the year 24-25. We're keeping the tuition rates stable. There is a very small increase of about $200,000 in both revenue and expenses. We are in negotiations with all 4 collective bargaining units at the college. So we are proposing incremental increase in their salaries, and we'll keep negotiating with them. And we're working with them in order to make some controlling of the benefit costs, so we can drop our total benefit cost by 2%. There's going to be for next year a draw from our fund balance of about $1.1 million in order to have a balanced budget. And for our fund balance, our current fund balance is about $5.3 million. This is the size of fund balance that we're striving for, maybe a little bit larger, and we're going to be. We feel this is the correct amount in order to be both in the recommended range from SUNY, which is 5 to 15% of our total budget, and we're hoping to be in that. We're on the higher end of that of that range right now, and we're hoping to stay there. And the final slide that I have to present to you is our final approved budget, board-approved budget for 24-25, with all the numbers that I have depicted in the previous charts. I would appreciate if you have any questions to ask me now.
Any questions? Mike Lane.
Thank you for that report. Do you know the split between Tompkins and Cortland County, what percentage? It usually goes back and forth a percent or two, like 48, 52 or something like that.
No, it's much higher. It's about 67 to 33.
Oh,
it's in the 60s to 30s, yes.
67 to 33?
Yes.
Thank you.
Randy.
Yes, thank you for the presentation information, detailed. It's good, appreciate that. I have a few questions. I'm looking at your fund balance, and how do you feel about that? Do you feel it should be higher? Are you feeling comfortable with your fund balance, or get your thoughts on that?
So our fund balance, the recommended fund balance range should be, according to SUNY, should be between 5 and 15% of your total budget for 1 year. Right now, we're about 13 to 14%, so we're on the higher end. We feel that we have enough to feel fiscally responsible and fiscally secure for the future. We want to be able to have enough fund balance to face any kind of rainy day, such as we had the pandemic right now, and the college was not as prepared. So since the pandemic has hit, we have been able, under the president's administration, the new president's administration, to raise the fund balance to that level. We feel comfortable. We might want to go a little higher or create some dedicated fund balances for different purposes in order to have for more security for the future.
Thank you. And the other question I have is, I'm sure I don't completely understand concurrent student tuition, but this is all, and I'm trying to understand how it fits in the budget. So these are all students that are educated in local high schools, and it's free to them, right? So how does the cost? So is the cost for the teachers and everybody do the work of teaching, or teachers in school districts who are teaching some classes, do they get paid for that? I'm not sure how the budget side works of that.
Sure. I'm going to ask Dennis in just a moment to talk about the specifics of the accounting, but just to make sure everyone understands the concurrent enrollment program. So TC3 has, as I said, has one of the largest concurrent enrollment program in the state. We serve students in counties throughout the state, but largely in Tompkins and Cortland County. Students are taught using college syllabus, faculty-approved credentials, but the teachers are employed by the high schools, and they are credentialed by our faculty to be qualified to teach those courses. Our curriculum, their teachers credentialed by our faculty. There is no cost to the student for the purposes of taking those courses. There is, and I'm going to have Dennis just speak specifically to the accounting, but the college has remitted tuition essentially for that, and we also earn chargeback revenue from counties other than Tompkins and Cortland County, our sponsoring counties. We earn chargeback revenue for that purpose.
Thank you.
So if you can see here in our final budget, 24-25 final budget, the second line, it shows concurrent student tuition for $3,290,136. And if you go into the expenses, you can see a tuition scholarship offsets, which is the exact amount and pays for the tuition that, so we're giving pretty much, we're charging the students, but at the same time we go on the expense side and we're giving them a scholarship, full scholarship, so there's no cost for them at all. This is only for the part of when a high school student takes their course, their concurrent courses at their high school. If a high school student decides that they want to come to TC3 and take a college course, they do get charged regularly like any other student. and they do pay tuition for that.
Thank you. I think it's a great service to the local people and the local students. So, yeah.
Research shows that students who are enrolled in concurrent enrollment programs, they have a higher propensity of enrolling in college as matriculated, fully enrolled students, and also, most importantly, completing. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions about the TC3 budget? Rich?
Thanks for the presentation, and I just want to repeat something I said at our budget meeting, because we had the same presentation there for the benefit of my colleagues that aren't on budget. But if you look at the pie chart showing the percentages of revenue coming from the different sources, New York State has really faded as we heard, but so has the county. The original proposal was that this was a third, and we've moved away from that. And I realize this is a difficult budget year, and I'm not saying we should do this right away, but looking at the benefits that TC3 provides across the spectrum of our residents that use it, I think we should set a budget goal, multi-year, but to get to a third. And one, I think we should do that because it's the right thing to do, and that was our original commitment. But it also would allow us to really lobby New York State to fulfill their commitment as well. It's difficult. We'd need to bring Cortland along, but I just wanted to share that thought that we're not quite where we should be, and I think we should try to get there. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, sorry, Mike Sigler.
That's okay. Well, first, Amy, I wanted to thank you. I see you out in the community a lot. I saw you at the Juneteenth event, but I saw you like just last week too at something. So I do appreciate that. I didn't want you to think like nobody notices that. But
Thank you.
my question is 2017 and 2018, the enrollment. I mean, that's just an extraordinary number of 4,700. Was that like an anomaly? And then I'm just wondering, just because the trend line is down, even with before the pandemic, it was trending down. And it seems like we've flattened out now, which is terrific. I'm just wondering if that was just a weird year.
2018? No. The peak for community colleges, for TC3, as well as community colleges across the state, and I can say probably with confidence the Northeast, was 2012, 2013. That was the peak year where we saw record numbers of high school graduates. That was, I think, probably the peak of the millennial generation graduating from high school, give or take. But 12, 13 was the peak for community colleges. And for most community colleges, if you look at their enrollment trend lines, that's when it started to move in a different direction. Until then, there were good 3 to 5 years of some really strong increases. But 2017, we thought we'd go back that many years just so you could see that even prior to the pandemic, we're starting to see a loss in core enrollment. One of the many things that we're doing to help reverse that is to do more to serve adult students. So there are many people in both counties who did not have the opportunity to go to college the first time, or may not have finished, or may be interested in coming back for another degree or credential. And so that means we have to make some changes on our end in terms of flexibility in the way we offer programs and what we're offering and all of that. But we think there's a lot of opportunity with adult students, even as the trend has changed with high school students.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Any last questions or comments? Thank you for the very thorough presentation. Much appreciated.
Thank you. We appreciate your support.
Next on our agenda is reports, and a report by the County Administrator. Lisa Holmes, you are on.
Thank you. Just a couple of updates tonight. First, I wanted to say that the county's Department of Emergency Response and Whole Health have been coordinating on the messaging regarding the prolonged heat and humidity this week, the extreme heat that we'll be experiencing. So they're reporting out or messaging out about precautions that residents can take and the list of local cooling centers available to escape from the heat. And then secondly, just to provide you with the update that we received some good news that we had submitted a congressionally directed spending application request for a geothermal heating project at the Department of Emergency Response. We received news from Senator Schumer's office that application was furthered to the Senate Appropriations Committee. This is a critical first step in the process. It doesn't guarantee that we will receive the funding, but it is the good news and first step in the process to receive funding. So those are all the updates that I have.
Questions for Lisa or comments? Okay, thank you. Next up, County Attorney Maury Josephson.
No specific report. Our department remains busy and as many departments as we possibly can.
Can you use your mic?
It's been a pleasure working with you so far and look forward to continuing.
Thank you. Questions or comments from Maury? Next is our Director of Finance, Lori Scarrett.
Thank you. Just wanted to let you know that last night we had the informational meeting for the real property tax foreclosure auction. There was roughly 30 attendees and lots of great questions. And next Monday night, the 24th, will be the real property tax foreclosure auction. And we currently are down to 9 properties. And that's all I have for tonight.
Questions or comments for Lori? Ann.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you and your staff for helping folks. I think probably a bunch of us know, but there is so much work that goes behind the scenes that we don't see. And to help folks make a payment plan or all the notices you provide to people, there's just so much that you do to help folks to avoid foreclosure. So thank you for all that you do.
Let's just add to that, they also physically knock on doors. They physically go there and try to find people. So. Mike Lane.
And I would simply add to that, it's interesting, the article, I think, in the Ithaca Times this week about the city trying to look for a process that, in my view, was going to mirror what we do, trying to give folks that extra opportunity to make a payment before the foreclosure happens, which I think is a good thing. I wanted to mention that. I had something else I was going to ask you, but I'll go ahead, Dan.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Lori? Okay, we'll move on, but Mike, if you think of it,
thanks.
We'll get you later. All right. Do we have any resolutions to be added to or withdrawn from the agenda? Shauna.
Hello, I would like to add resolution number 12509, Budget Adjustment Youth Services Department, final 2024 state aid figures.
Thank you. We need 10 votes to get it on the agenda. Is there a second? Veronica seconds. Any discussion? Okay. We're all in the room, so we can just raise our hands. All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. So that is added to the agenda. I think we're calling it Resolution L. We're up to the consent agenda. The consent agenda are resolutions and appointments to be voted on as a group unless any member of the legislature requests that a resolution or appointment be instead included separately and individually as part of the business of standing or special committees. We have 2 appointments for the Environmental Management Council, Peter McDonald, Town of Danby representative, and from the Government Operations Committee to the Tompkins County Historical Commission, Eve Snyder. Resolution A from Housing and Economic Development Committee, resolution to authorize funding from the Housing Affordability and Supportive Infrastructure Grant Program for 2024, Town of Danby Community Development Block Grant, CDBG grant. Grant writer support, ID 12464, From the Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee, Resolution B, Budget Adjustment, Department of Recycling and Materials Management, providing for the unanticipated leachate expense, ID 12476. Is there a second for the consent agenda? Ann, thank you. Okay, we'll have a vote. All in favor? Any opposed? And that is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. We're moving on to standing and special committees. Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee. Mike Lane, Chair.
I did remember what I wanted to ask Lori. Lori, we heard a speaker tonight talk about legal action that's been taken against some counties over the foreclosure proceedings. Have we had any legal actions? Or maybe Maury would be the right one to ask that of.
Yes,
or if you'd pull your mic in a little, please. Thank you.
Yes, the county is a defendant in one of the class action lawsuits that have been brought against multiple counties nationwide. Our case is pending in the Northern District of New York. It's at the very beginning phases. The county is being represented by Romer Wallens in the case. There's also a hearing upcoming within the next few weeks before the federal multi-district litigation panel to discuss whether the cases that are pending across the country on this issue should be consolidated before a single court. So there's a lot of that beginning of the case wrangling going on. But it is a situation where multiple counties across the state and across the country in jurisdictions that allowed the foreclosing taxing authority to retain the surplus funds, those are, those pretty much across the country are all being sued in these class actions.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry we're being sued, but thank you for the report. The Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee met on June 13th. We've got a lot of work we did in the resolutions tonight, but we did have the presentation from TC3, much like we heard tonight for the full legislature. And we did hear that there has been an effort at the state legislature to require an 11th member of boards of trustees of community colleges, which apparently made it through the Senate but has been sidelined in the Assembly. So we have to keep track of that. The concern there that we heard from Dr. Kremenek was that appointing a trustee, in this case from faculty or staff, would put someone on the Board of Trustees with a direct financial conflict of interest because the Board of Trustees has oversight over the budget as well as administration. So that's just one to, we'll watch that as something happens next year with it. Also, we had a report from Norma Jane and Corey Post about their work on the history of over-target requests. That had been requested by, I believe, legislator Mezzi, and they did quite a deep dive into this, gave us, I believe everyone's been sent that, if I'm not mistaken at this point, but it's a sort of an interactive program that you can query different things about with respect to the over targets, how they've been handled over the years, 1 times, 2 or 3 year over targets, those kinds of things. So that was very interesting, and we commend them on the work that was done for that presentation. Shauna, was there anything else that we should mention?
I don't think so.
Then let's go ahead with the resolutions, if that's all right.
Please.
I have Resolution C, authorization for public hearing, Tompkins Cortland Community College operating budget. Now, I'm moving the amended version which is in your red folder, which has a different date on it. The correct date should be July 16.
Is there a second? Shauna seconds. Did you want to say any more about it, Mike?
No, it's just setting the annual public hearing on the budget.
Okay. Any discussion? Ready to vote then? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that is unanimous.
Resolution D is the ratification of the bargaining agreement between the corrections officers, Local 2062, and the County of Tompkins. That's ID 12473, and I so move.
Is there a second? Shauna seconds. Discussion. Shauna.
I just want to say thank you to Lisa and her staff. This was a very long negotiation that took many years, and also want to thank the corrections officers for coming to the table, the union, and I think this is a contract that they can be proud of for many years to come.
I agree.
Mike Sigler.
I just need some guidance on this. I was endorsed by the union, so I don't know if I can vote on it. I assume I can, considering they voted on it to pass it, so I don't know.
Because you've been endorsed, is that what you mean? Maury, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I think in this...
Microphone.
In this situation, the question of whether to recuse yourself is up to you.
For a little more guidance than that, Maury.
That's, I don't see any direct conflict or suggestion of impropriety.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Lisa, I'm wondering if you could remind us how many years this is going back and how many years it covers?
I want to say 2017. Let me see. 1, 2, 4.
I can come back to you.
Oh, you have it right here. Yeah, so the last contract expired at the end of 2017. So 2018 through 2025.
I just wanted to, put a spotlight on how big a agreement this is.
Yes.
Any other discussion? Are we ready to vote then? All in favor? Any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, that passed unanimously. Thank you.
Resolution E is the adjustment of the 2024 budget for the city-county sales tax distribution agreement. That's ID 12452, and I so move.
Can I get a second on that? Veronica seconds. Anything more you wanted to say, Mike?
No, it's just the annual breakdown according to the terms of the agreement, now that we have the full amount of the sales tax that has come in.
Any discussion? Randy?
Yes, I don't remember seeing this broken out like this before, but maybe it has been, and I'm getting old and I've forgotten. But it's good to see the breakout of how this is done. But how does this process work? So the money comes to the county and we disperse it directly, or we disperse it to the city and they disperse it to these entities? How does the process work?
Lori?
I believe it's a combination of the two. Some of it goes to the city and they disperse, and some of it we disperse directly.
I probably could have answered that myself. All right. Thank you, though.
Any other discussion? Okay, let's go ahead and have a vote then. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries unanimously.
The last one I have is Resolution F, resolution designating Tompkins County Finance Director as the Chief Fiscal Officer of the Greater Tompkins County Municipal Health Insurance Consortium, and I so move.
Travis seconds. Discussion. Mike?
Formerly, the financial officer at the city had this role, and that person isn't there anymore, and they need someone with credentials like Lori to be able to do this. And I know she's had a discussion about that, and I won't say she volunteered, but we asked her whether it would be all right, and she said yes.
There's a term we used at one place I worked where you were voluntold.
Well, no, I don't think it was quite that either.
Not quite either. Any discussion, any further discussion? Mike Sigler.
Well, I mean, will our county finance director be getting paid for this work?
No.
So this would,
But we're a member of the consortium. We're the founding member of the consortium, so it's in our best interest to see this continue. And we're now up to, I don't know how many members of the consortium, and we want it to be properly administered and financially sound.
I mean, I don't dispute that. It sounds like a big job.
We did have a discussion at a meeting that you were not present at. We had a presentation by them and a lot of discussion about this very issue. We wanted to make sure that we weren't putting too much workload on Lori and that she had the resources to handle this. And the conclusion seemed to be yes, but if somebody wants to have a different version of that conversation, Lisa, do you want to weigh in?
Sure. I sit on the consortium board and executive committee, and they've come a long way in the last several years to having fiscal staff to do the direct work, and they also continue to contract with Losi and Cahill on a lot of the financials. So this position would be really an oversight and sign off on those items rather than doing the work of. It's still going to be time granted, but it's not going to be years past. We had staff in the finance office that was directly doing the work, and that's not what this ask is.
Somebody else had their hand up, I'm sorry. Randy.
Yeah, I would just ask Lori that if this seems to be more than you bargained for, if you'd just share that with us.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that.
Any further discussion? Okay, let's have a vote then. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
That's all I have.
Any last questions or comments for Mike? Shauna.
Yeah, I did look back on the agenda. I think the one thing we forgot is that Roxanne from the airport did come in and talk a little bit about airport staffing.
Yes.
And she's going to propose, instead of renewing some contracts, to hire some airport staff so that it also becomes a 24-hour operation. So I'm assuming that will probably come forward to the full legislature in a few weeks or during budget time. Is that right?
Yes, and it had been discussed at F&I, and probably will return there, won't it? I'm not sure.
So it came first to F&I, and we wanted to have a fuller discussion with the budget, capital, and personnel, and I think from there, a broader discussion with the full legislature. So.
Anything else for the Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee? All right, thank you. Next up, Workforce, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, Veronica Pillar, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. WDIC has not met since our last legislature meeting, but our next meeting is next week, Wednesday, June 26th at 3 p.m. Agenda is not fully set yet, but we are going to continue talking about workplace climate surveys and dive deeper into the previous one from 2018, looking at the actual survey that was used, which a lot of current committee members were not here at that point to see it, and talk about what we might want in 2025. We are also going to possibly consider a resolution about departments reporting DEI goals to WDIC in the future. Not this year, but after some work happens, after our strategic operations plan is approved, hopefully tonight. And the purpose of considering a resolution would not be for the committee to outline the process. I think that's happening elsewhere, led by our Chief Equity and Diversity Officer, but to get such a thing, on the record to outlast the particular people who come up with whatever intentions we do. And we're working on the agenda right now, so if there's anything else you'd want us to do, let us know.
Questions or comments for Veronica?
And Travis, if I've missed something, feel free to jump in.
Okay. Next up, Public Safety Committee, Rich John, Chair.
Thank you. The Public Safety Committee has not met since our last meeting. We will be meeting next week, June 25th, Tuesday, at 1 p.m. here in Chambers. I anticipate we're going to have a discussion regarding the Community Justice Center. Lisa, is that correct? That we adjourned from last month, so it's coming up. The only other thing I just mentioned to the members is our jail numbers. We're at 54 with 8 board outs.
Questions or comments for Rich? Okay, thank you. Downtown Facilities Special Committee, Randy Brown, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Dan. We did meet on June 11th, and we had a interesting agenda. We submitted a request, our Planning and Sustainability Department submitted the initial review to the State Historic Preservation Office about the buildings that we own at 308 North Tioga, 300 North Tioga, and 120 East Buffalo, and they responded that all those buildings are contributing resources in the DeWitt Historic District. And that's their initial response to that. We had a good conversation about that, and the feeling is that that's their first response. We're going to invite them down. There is discussion if it gets complicated, we should inform our legislators in the state level that are issues there. This is important that we get a sign-off on them if we're expecting to get grants from the state. It's also, we found out that this is actually a national historic district as well, which means that the federal regulations can also come into play. So if we want federal money as well, that's a hurdle we're going to have to jump over. I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll make it through this. But we asked for this determination. We're ahead of the curve. It doesn't affect our timeline at this point. We'll work through that. We're going to invite them down, and we'll see where that goes. One of the things we discussed also is regardless of what happens to these buildings, they may have asbestos or some other contaminant in them. So we are moving forward for doing that analysis, as opposed to waiting a few months, whether we end up removing them or rebuilding them, we're going to have to deal with that, whatever that is, even if we decide not to do anything at all, right? But the most interesting conversation we had was around parking and access to this new center of government building. We found a few things, that the county's already done an analysis with employees and how they're getting to work here. So that data is being accumulated now, I believe. Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but I know that's a data we've worked on. The other one that we don't have is how many people are coming to these front-facing departments. How many people are going to come and visit us? So we talked about a parking study, which it turns out the city did a parking study as well about 2 years ago. Susan and I have talked about that a little bit, and we feel that we should look at that parking study, or at least see what that means to us. And we may want to do our own accessibility study as well for other reasons, which I think we will. But I think understanding how many people are going to be visiting these front-facing departments is really important in how they get access here, as well as our employees. And also it's discussion of not just cars, but it's bicycles, it's buses, it's how people walk here, those kind of things. I was trying to get a jump on this before we get our request for qualifications submitted to us, which is the last issue. So we submitted or put out there the request for qualifications about 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, and we'll be getting all those responses from potential architects and engineers in July. And then it will be after our next meeting, but in that meeting, we'll decide who's going to be the review committee of those things, and we're looking legally how many legislatures can be part of that review committee, because there's a lot of people that want to be part of reviewing all these potential engineers. And Rail shared with us that after it being posted within a few days, there were 26 people that downloaded it, entities downloaded it. Let's hope we get some good ones and hopefully some women and minority-owned architects and engineers as well.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Randy? Shauna?
I do, in fact, hope that we do our own parking study. The parking study that the city did was questioned. There were some staff that are no longer here, and there was some questions about validity and their numbers not being accurate. So I hope we keep that in mind and do our own study. I'm not one for wasting money on studies, but I think this is really important.
I think generally the committee was in favor of doing that. Okay.
Any other questions for Randy? Great, thank you. Health and Human Services Committee, Shauna Black, Chair.
Thank you very much. And let's see here, we had our meeting just yesterday. Can I just say I absolutely love having our meeting the day before a legislature meeting, because I don't have to think about what I've forgotten. So we did have a few resolutions. The first one that I would like to move is Resolution G, authorizing purchase of X-ray machine for enhanced security at the Human Services Building. And that's ID 12489. I so move.
Travis seconds. Discussion.
The Human Services Building is looking to make that building more secure, and part of that will be to purchase an X-ray machine that they can put people's possessions. They're still going to have lockers outside, so if someone has backpacks or other items, they're welcome to use the outside lockers. But this will just provide another way for people to have access to that building. The way that the X-ray machine works is that the person would place their belongings on the conveyor belt, scanned, and then at the end of the conveyor belt, they would pick their belongings up. This was also for the machine itself, as well as a warranty in case it breaks down.
Greg.
Yeah, I had a question about the warranty, since the 5-year warranty is over 50% of the replacement cost for this. What does it come with, like a 1-year warranty? Does it come with a 30-day warranty? Does it come with a buyer beware? And I guess, would we be better off putting $12,000 aside and self-funding the repairs up to an amount, right? Since it is so much, it seems like it's not like a $395 add-on when you're buying your, $2,000 TV. It seems like you're putting 50% into the warranty. It seems like that's where they're making their markup on this thing.
Yeah, I'll let Lisa answer that if she knows the answer.
Unfortunately, I don't. I know that there was a lot of research put into this. I'm not sure. I'm not sure the answer to that.
Okay.
Ann.
Yeah, maybe we need to take some time to find out what that would cover, because I know for some machines like that, they might cover calibration and maintenance during that time, and then also a warranty, but we don't know.
More discussion. Mike Sigler, then Mike Lane.
I'm just wondering, is this in response to something?
I mean, this continues to be in response to people feeling unsafe, employees feeling unsafe, people that are seeking services feeling unsafe. We've added security in the building. We've added lockers, and this is just part of that.
Yeah, I would say we have implemented security measures in the building, and it's just a piece of the overall puzzle in what we're trying to accomplish, and with the additional other pieces that we've put into place at the building, that this was one one area that was found to be in need of attention by the security company and the security staff in the building, that was to kind of finish the overall security measures that are in place.
Mike Lane.
Just that I think we should move this right along and get this machine ordered. If they wanted to discuss the warranty, let them do that. And if they can get something less expensive that does what it's needed to, I think we can leave it up to administration and the department heads to figure that out.
Any other discussion? Greg?
Sorry, this is coming out of fund balance, general fund? Where's the money coming from? Am I missing that in the resolution?
It's coming out of departmental equipment in Department of Social Services.
So they have this money in their budget already?
They will be receiving some federal and state reimbursement for it, but we are increasing their expense line to for the local share of it. It's not currently in their budget.
So where are we increasing that from?
From the general fund, yes.
It says general fund, social services, and then it has the reimbursements, 7894 from federal and then 8839 for state.
But those two don't add up to the whole 33,000. So Greg, are you asking about the rest of the money? Which I'm also curious about.
So one, I just want to make it clear, I'm fully on board with the x-ray machine. I think the resolution is a little confusing and unclear. And I think we've experienced this in the past sometimes with some of these resolutions. And I still question the warranty. If we don't know what we're getting, I'm a little uncomfortable voting on that, but I don't want to hold things up. But didn't we also increase what departments are able to spend without legislature approval up to $15,000 per our policy? So like if we pulled this out and they wanted to spend that, but I don't know where it's coming from. So I don't know if I can do that maneuver here.
I understand the concern, and the department head offered to be here tonight, and I said, no worries. But I was not anticipating these questions, so my apologies.
Okay, I have Rich and Randy.
I will support the resolution, but I think Mike Lane's suggestion that if you find that the warranty is not necessary and we can save some money there, please.
Randy.
Yes, it was my understanding that the warranty was actually covers all service calls in some type of priority response service. So it'd be good to find out, but that was my understanding as to what that was for.
Okay. Any other discussion on this resolution? Are we ready to vote? Okay, all in favor of Resolution G? Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. I have another resolution, Resolution H, Budget Transfer, Children with Special Care Needs Early Intervention Program, ID 12431. I so move.
Is there a second? Susan seconds. Discussion. Shawna, did you want to say a little more about it?
I'm trying to think what this was for.
Stipends?
Yeah, so this was actually our, trying trying to think, so this was for the OTR that we brought forth this summer, where we had this great idea that we were going to hire these therapists. We couldn't do that. And so this is to do something different and to offer the incentives to the individuals that are currently employed doing the work right now.
Discussion. Okay, we're ready to vote then? All in favor? Any opposed? That is, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Then I have one more resolution, Resolution L, which is in your red folders. This was not on the agenda, but we've been asked by Kate Shanks-Booth, the Director of Youth Services, to bring this forward as it is time sensitive. And I would like to move Resolution L, Budget Adjustment Youth Services Department, Vital 2024 State Aid Figures, ID 12509.
Is there a second? Travis seconds. Discussion. We ready to vote then? All in favor? Any opposed? That is, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
And I did just have a short report. We did have on our agenda initially to talk about the project approval request for the new shelter, and that's actually going to move into housing and economic development and facilities. So more to come on that. We also talked a little bit about the RFP. There will be an RFP for the shelter coming up for shelter service, coming up, I believe, in the next few months. Is that correct?
Yes, it will be released probably within, a month or two.
Okay. And then as far as the outreach program that we have, we are going to reopen that and hope for change some of the RFP and then hope that we have some more applicants apply.
Any other questions or comments about Health and Human Services Committee? Veronica.
It's not about any of those things, but about health in general. It's very hot out. We're having a horrible, terrible, I tried to say them both at once, heat wave right now, and I expect that we'll only have more of them. And I'm wondering if this is something that you've discussed at the committee or if the county has longer term plans for that. I know and appreciate our emergency response department has been sending out alerts with supportive information.
Yeah, and we also talked about there is some funding that's available through HEAP for cooling. If people need help with that, they can go to DSS. There's also some allocations for our seniors, and they could go to the Office of Aging and talk with the people there. We also talked about some cooling centers at the local library, and then there was, GIAC as well. So those are two cooling centers that we know of, and I don't think we talked about much more as far as cooling.
In the release from the health department, there's a link where you can click on cooling centers, and it lists all of them throughout the county, in addition to those mentioned.
Any last items for Health and Human Services Committee? Thank you.
Thank you.
Housing and Economic Development Committee, Greg Mezzi, Chair.
Thanks, Dan. We last met on Wednesday, June 5th, here at 3 p.m. We had a pretty full agenda, some of which you saw on the consent agenda. We had a discussion about the hotel room occupancy tax law, and that will continue as a conversation through the committee, through the Strategic Tourism Planning Board, and hopefully we'll have some more to report maybe by July or August meeting of the legislature on that topic. We had the annual report from Visit Ithaca, and we also had an update from the Tompkins County Chamber of Commerce on their housing task force, as well as some other discussions at that meeting. I just wanted to also bring attention that two of our municipalities who submitted a joint application, Dryden and Caroline, received $8.9 million in federal funding to help fund 125 miles of fiber, which will connect over 2,600 locations in those two communities. So that was a big award and big accomplishment for Dryden Fiber and Caroline, looking to do a similar partnership with Dryden Fiber for municipal-owned broadband. So wanted to just highlight that and congratulate those two municipalities. And hopefully we can continue to join in the award recipient list at some point of federal dollars, state dollars, all the other dollars out there available to help create a more connected community with fiber and infrastructure.
I believe we're expecting an announcement literally any day now. Yeah. Questions or comments for our Housing and Economic Development Committee? Veronica.
I think one other thing we heard from Liddy Barger from the Continuum of Care is that their housing surge project at the Asteri building, which was lining up people who are unhoused or recently unhoused to move into the permanent supportive housing units, went very well. There were 40 units available, and they moved people into 39 of them. And then, not at the committee, but separately, I have learned from Dave Sanders from OAR, one of his staff members goes into the encampments regularly and at least weekly counts how many people are living there. And 2 weeks ago, this person counted 31, and this is the jungle encampment residents. 1 week ago, they counted 10, and I don't know the details, but they attributed the change to this housing surge. Of course, there's many, many more people who are unhoused or unstably housed throughout the county that are not in this particular location. But I thought it nice to have those numbers.
Thank you, Veronica. That's a good update.
Ann.
Yeah, I just want to also add, because that was a new term for me recently, a housing surge. So that's when a whole bunch of housing is available at once, and trying to figure out how to get people in there with as much support as they need and as smoothly as possible with the transition. And I just wanted to add to what my colleague, Dr. Pillar, said was, not only do they line people up to get in there, but the process is really detailed as far as evaluating people, seeing where they're at, what services they're going to need once they get in there, and then helping them to get in there and continue with the services they need. So a big shout out to our Continuum of Care folks and everybody else. We have a lot of organizations that are helping give folks hopefully everything they need, or at least a lot of the support that they need to get into more permanent housing.
Anything else for our Housing and Economic Development Committee? All right, thank you. Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Susan Curry, Vice Chair.
The Facilities and Infrastructure at the May meeting, Roxanne Noble, Director of the airport, and Josh Nally, who's the Deputy Director of Operations, came and gave a presentation discussion on staffing and marketing. And just to repeat some of what Shauna had said earlier, one of the things we learned is that the staffing of the airport personnel does not actually cover all hours that the airport is used. For example, people may show up as early as 3 a.m. for their flights, and there are people who are there to check them in and take their luggage, but there's no airport employees. So it was a good discussion. I think it will continue. We also heard about the emergency preparedness that Rich and Veronica participated in. And there was also a report from the Highway Department about their use of suit coat, the materials for the roads. And our next meeting is Thursday, June 20th.
Questions or comments for Susan? Thank you. Government Operations Committee, Amanda Champion, Chair.
Thank you very much. Government Operations met on June 6th, and we had quite a few policies. Some of them we will talk about here in a minute. The one thing I wanted to mention was that Jay Franklin came from assessment, and he brought to us some additional exemptions that he would like us to consider adopting for our residents. And we had some discussion about each one and then gave him direction on which ones we'd like to see a resolution for. And he's going to come back at our August meeting to talk further about those. So if you're interested in exemptions, come to that meeting. And that's really my only report. And then I have several resolutions.
Questions or comments for Amanda? Why don't you go ahead with the resolutions, please?
All right. Well, the moment we've all been waiting for, the adoption of the Tompkins County Strategic Operations Plan 2024 to 2029, ID 12438, and I would move that.
Is there a second? Susan Curry, seconds. Discussion.
Yeah, this has been about a year in the making, if not more, and I hope you've all had a chance to read through it. Many thanks to Lisa and Bridget and Norma and the steering committee, which also included Dominic Recchio and Charlene Holmes and Katie Borgella and Megan McDonald and is that everybody, I think? And Dan Klein and Shauna Black and myself. And we've been meeting every couple weeks for about a year. And it's been a really interesting process. We've worked with Barry Dunn, as you know, for the past year, and they have come in and guided us and shared their knowledge, and we've ended up here at this strategic plan. So I hope that folks feel that it was a good process and that things that you feel are important are reflected in the plan. And I'll leave it there, but I don't know if Lisa or Bridget want to say anything more about it.
Thanks for the opportunity, Amanda. I'm delighted that we've come to this point. I think that it marks a significant change in the way that the county approaches strategic priorities and budgeting, and I'm really looking forward to this implementation phase. And I also echo my thanks to everyone who participated in this process.
Right, and I forgot Ruby. Ruby Pulliam was also on the steering committee. And yeah, I would just echo that, like the idea of this is to have a guiding document that this legislature can go back to, but future legislatures can go back to as well and say, here are the priorities for this time period and how can we bring those to life in our budgeting, in our departments, and in all the work that our staff does.
Lane, did you ever hand up? Yep.
You know, the one you moved, Amanda, did that include that small change that we made about the fundable?
Right, I hope so. I guess I didn't. Yes, Bridget's nodding.
Okay, so that's in there. And I would point out too that this resolution says we're adopting this, not just accepting this. That's quite a difference.
Yes.
Randy.
Again, thank you for all the work that everybody did on this. I think it was a good process. And I did read it more than once. And as I read it, I just read a few sentences in one little ash item, and there's a lot to be done just in that. So my question is to implementation. Who does all this implementation of this? And who sets the priorities within the priorities? And how does that process, how do you see that working?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. And again, Lisa and Bridget are leading that. Much of that steering committee is continuing to meet and are talking about, how do we implement all these things? And I think it will come down to each department, but I'll let Lisa speak to that.
We just had a meeting about it this morning, actually, and we've had several follow-up meetings in terms of drilling down into objectives and work plans and and projecting out this year, next year, and the following year, when tasks are going to take place. And I envision that it's going to become a regularly scheduled and regularly referred to document in department head meetings and with legislative standing committees. I hope that legislators and committee members can use it as a guidepost to what departments are working toward and to fulfill the strategic objectives of the legislature.
Thank you.
Mike Sigler.
I have to ask this question. I don't want it to come off poorly. I mean, I read through everything, and I've read through everything again. And you had mentioned that it was like a major change in how the county is approaching certain things. And I don't know. I'm looking at everything, and I'm like, we're already doing a lot of this. And so I'm kind of curious as to what that means, that this is a major change. I mean, we talk a little bit about homelessness. Like, we've been addressing a lot of these things for quite a while. And I guess I look at this document, and it's more almost like a summary of what, it's like we've put everything in one place kind of idea of, hey, here's what it's kind of like the rapid medical response is in here, which is a good place for it. But it's not that we haven't been doing these things. So I guess when you say things like, well, we're going to implement this, I don't know what that looks like or what that means, because it seems like all of our committees have already been working on this, on these things. So that's, I guess, my question in a roundabout way. I guess I don't know what we mean by we're going to implement this. And I really would rather this be an accepted document than a adopted document, just because, again, I don't really know what that means to adopt this. What does that change at the county and how we do that, how we do things? So that was my only question, is what implementation, I guess, will look like. So
I'd be glad to attempt to speak to it.
I know it's a big question. I'm sorry.
Sure. But it's a great question, and I think in some measure, or maybe large measure, the plan is a reflection of what the departments are doing and or what the legislature has identified already as priority areas. There are some pieces of it that we've said we've wanted to do or improve for years, for instance, targeted recruitment, retention, and other areas within our organization that have maybe risen to the top more now after COVID around employee recruitment, retention, morale, et cetera. This, though, provides us with a roadmap for getting there and drilling down as to looking at the steps it's going to take us to getting there and making progress in some of these areas. And the intention is to do just that, to try to make progress, to tie these goals and objectives to the budget and the budget process, to ensure that we are the values that we're espousing and the priorities that you have set forth in the work of the departments and in the annual budgets.
Okay. Amanda.
Just also to respond to that, I mean, I think you're right, Mike. Like, this is a lot of stuff that our departments are already doing, like, because that's what this county government has prioritized. This is a formal way to say, these are actually our priorities, and here's where we want you department heads and departments to go forth and do this. You know, it doesn't preclude some other thing outside of this, but if a legislator comes in and says, I want to, start whatever, the Department of Poetry, well, that's not necessarily in this. Maybe that's a good idea, but this is kind of what we said we're going to focus on for a few years. And maybe let's think about the Department of Poetry, you know, in a couple of years. So I mean, it's not a restriction, but I think it's a way to guide all of us and the whole of the government. That's my way of looking at it.
Veronica.
I think of it as a major change. I had another thing too, not in terms of like we're taking this ship and we're steering it in a different direction, but we're like posting a map right up by the steering wheel when there wasn't anything posted before. Which to that point, can this operations plan be posted prominently on our website somewhere and or like physically posted in legislature chambers? Probably not the whole plan, but like, I don't know, an appropriate amount of it.
Sure, there's a plan for, there's an intention to post it on our website prominently, and we can make copies available, certainly hard copies.
Greg.
Yeah, thank you. I think on packet page 49, why a strategic plan, the biggest thing that stood out to me was Tompkins County will use the plan to effectively prioritize its efforts over the next 5 years, resulting in Tompkins County taking a confident, data-driven leadership role in the community. I think the word data-driven is a significant shift from what I personally have experienced up until this point on the legislature. Being able to have the tools and systems and things in place to track, to have performance metrics that we can tie back to and evaluate the success of things. I do think that that's a significant difference from how we've done things or how we've come out and said we're going to do things, right? To lead with data, because I'm a believer that data is not confrontational, because it is what it is. Here's the facts of the data. And I think as we get better in our budgeting and our processes and things like that, we can have a more data-driven approach to decisions that we make. And I think in here I saw a number of performance measures that will be tied back to what the objectives are. And so for me, that's incredibly helpful. So I would not support accepting this. I would support adopting this. Those are the two words we're debating. Because I think if we don't adopt this as a legislature, we're just saying, thank you, is Barry Dunn? Thank you, Barry Dunn and committee, to do this work. We will put this on the shelf and we've accepted the work that you've done, rather than adopting this as the priority of the county. That is the distinction we've made in the past when we've accepted reports and not adopted them. So I think if we're going to live this plan for the next 5 years, we must adopt it.
Randy.
That was my question. Can somebody give me the definition or the difference between accepted and adopted?
Hear it, or did you need more? Randy, did you hear the definition, or did you want to hear more?
Is that his definition, or is it?
Who wants it? Maury's got the data.
It's Rule 10 of the Rules of the Legislature on page 11. And just looking at accept and adopt, the first definition is accept. The legislature may vote to accept in whole or in part the receipt of the report of any person, consultant, committee, task force, or other group. Acceptance is hereby defined to mean that the legislature acknowledges receipt of the report and thanks its author for it. Adopt is the legislature may vote to adopt any such report in whole or in part. Adoption is hereby defined to mean that the legislature acknowledges receipt of the report, thanks its author for it, and formally commits itself to implementing the recommendations of the report. A vote to adopt does not preclude the legislature from voting in the future against the implementation of any particular recommendation of the report.
Thank you.
Shauna.
So I personally, I agree with you, Greg. I think that we need to adopt this. Endless hours have been spent by our staff. We've had community input, and we've collected, Barry Dunn has collected that information and kind of wrapped a nice little gift. for us to use so that we can move forward and we can prioritize the many things that are happening in our county. And I kind of see this as, you know, if in fact we just accepted, it would be like, thank you, and we would just literally put it on a shelf and we wouldn't have principles to guide us over the next 5 years. So this was $85,000. I think it was money well spent. If we're going to do what they say, and if not, then we just accept it and we put it on the bookshelf. But I think this is important information. It's data collected, and it gives us a path forward.
You trying to say something?
I don't disagree. I only wanted to clarify $85,000 for which we receive grant funds.
Yeah.
Mike Sigler.
Well, now I have to say like 3 things. A, I don't look at accept and adopt that way. But however, I didn't make a motion. So it's not really a debate. It's just, we have accepted things in the past and we actually have done actions on them. It's this idea that we accept something and we put it on a shelf. That has not been my experience at this legislature, but maybe your memory is different than mine. A couple things to be careful of. I mean, listen, I put out pitches all the time in my job for billboards. Some work out, some don't. I put in endless hours on certain pitches and they just don't work out. And that's fine. That's just the way things are. So I would just be a little careful when we say, well, we've invested so much time in something, so we've got to do this. It's like, no, sometimes you invest a lot of time in something and it just doesn't happen. I'm not saying that about this plan. I'm saying that in general, I just never liked that idea. The other thing I just feel like, I mean, listen, I don't have a huge problem with anything in this plan. I mean, I would change some things, obviously, but it's a big plan. I found some factual inaccuracies in it, but again, overall, it's fine. We're calling this a 5-year plan, and it's not a 5-year plan. It's a 1-year plan, I think, because there's an election in a year for county legislature, and there's going to be a bunch of new people, I think, running and winning. I would imagine there are some people that are going to be stepping down. Who knows? I don't know what the future holds, but clearly that new legislature, whoever the makeup is, will be elected on certain things that the community thinks are important. And then those things are the things that become important. And while we can adopt this now, I just hope that people recognize that a strategic plan will be flexible and that other people are going to get elected and they're not going to agree with certain things in this strategic plan. And I would imagine that they will have electoral heft behind them. Let's put it that way, that certain people will have elected them to put forward whatever their town believes. Whatever the case may be at that instance. So while I think it's great that we call it a 5-year plan, I guess, I do recognize that we live in an electoral system. And those, again, something may happen and our whole thing may change. And I would just like to know that we have some flexibility. So thank you.
Ann.
Yes, I appreciate everybody's work on this. And I want to say I'm quite impressed with how everybody was able to, or all the entities involved, including a lot of staff, legislators, and the firm that we hired to put together what we want. And this is what we want, this is what our staff wants, but this basically came from what we want as legislators, how we want to lead the county in the next 5 years. So this is our plan. It's not just a plan, it's really our plan. And I feel really good about it because, yes, we have done some of the things in here. We've done a lot of the things in here. I think this just codifies it so that going forward, I'm hoping that if some new people are elected in a couple of years, that they will look at this and going, this is a plan that we're going to stick to unless there's really maybe some little tweaks or something else happens in the community. But this gives not just us a roadmap, but this gives, at the legislature, but this gives the staff some security and some guidance in going forward. So I'm really happy that we were able to put this together, and I'm happy to vote on it.
Amanda.
Yeah, I mean, maybe similar to what Annie just said, this is our plan, this legislature's plan, and it gives guidance to the staff who, regardless of who is elected to serve on this legislature next year for the following 3 years, it's for the staff who will carry this on, who will be the ones who are actually working on this regardless of who is sitting at this table. I mean, they're the ones who are going to be implementing it, and we come and go. We sit here, and yeah, there might be different priorities next year or the year after or in 2030, and they'll have to decide at those times, like, does this still apply? But there will need to be another process over time and say, okay, well, this plan, it's been here for a couple of years, maybe we'll set up a time and we'll start working on the next plan. This isn't meant to last forever. This is meant to be over the next several years when we all go somewhere else and the staff can keep working on it. So it is our plan, but it's actually the county's plan. It's not just us at this table.
Are we ready to have a vote?
Yes.
Yes. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And do you have more resolutions?
I do. Now we get to talk about policies. Let's see. Resolution to update the Administrative Policy Manual, Policy 01-23, Tobacco-Free Workplace, ID 12444.
Mike Lane seconds.
And let's see, I'm just trying to find it. I think this is just an update, very few updates to talk about, to add in what facilities and properties we're talking about. I think that was the only change. Bridget's nodding.
Any discussion? Okay, let's have a vote then. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, then we have Resolution K, resolution to update the Administrative Policy Manual, Policy 01-53, Cannabis-Free Work Environment, ID 12445, and I move that.
Is there a second? Mike Lane seconds. Discussion.
Yeah, this is new, right? Am I remembering that? This is new, and it was modeled after the tobacco policy. We had a little discussion about it at committee and just made a small change on packet page 61. We talked a little bit about, you know, who's the one, you know, making the decision if someone is under the influence of marijuana. We don't have like a breathalyzer test like you do for alcohol. So how do we decide, you know, who makes the decision that someone appears to be under the influence? And we felt like that really rested with supervisors, not with coworkers or other people coming and going. It's really a supervisor's job to be paying attention to that. So that was just the one change that we made in the committee, but otherwise, I'm sure we can try to answer questions if there are any.
Questions or comments? Travis.
When you say it's the supervisor's responsibility to tell if the staff is under the influence, are the supervisors going to get special training?
Lisa?
I think on discussion as how to interpret this as recommended by the state that we have these, that it's not going to be, it's a determination not of whether someone is under the influence so much as it's based on their work performance. So if someone is clearly unable to perform their job duties, it's going to be based on that. It's behavioral based.
Okay, I have several people. Amanda, did you want to follow up with that? Looked like you had something.
Right. I guess, I mean, maybe this isn't necessarily helpful to your question, but it does say it can be established by a professional opinion or based on lay observations by supervisors. So, you know, I guess if a supervisor feels like something is amiss, I'm not sure what their recourse would be, but reaching out to administration, you know, or administration having a plan to say, here's how we're going to judge that, but I'm not sure.
Okay, Randy.
That was part of my question, what Travis asked about training for people on this. But is there a similar policy for under the influence of other things like alcohol or anything else?
Yeah, there's an alcohol policy and the tobacco policy we just
Okay,
passed.
so they're very similar then. So I think training of some sort might be important.
Greg.
Yeah. Sorry, Lisa, I feel like I'm picking on you today. It's nothing personal. What you said, though, based on job performance, the policy necessarily doesn't say that. It says the use is my understanding of the policy. But from what I heard you just say, if I can do my job and nobody knows the difference, it's not a violation of the policy. But I don't think that's what the policy says.
I don't know, because there is not a test that one can administer to determine cannabis use. The only mechanism that we would have to determine this would be based on job performance and behavior in the workplace and the observations of supervisors. So I think if we're going to be providing any training, it's going to be through HR and what is and is not allowable for a supervisor to, you know, what kind of assumptions a supervisor can make around such use. I think, you know, we went around and around on this because it is seemingly a mushy area here, and at the same time, we needed to have a policy in place, and so it's where we're starting from. But I hear everyone's point that we are going to need to discuss this with our department heads and supervisors and establish the protocol with HR.
I appreciate that, and I caution in the process. What I don't want to have happen, and Rich, if I can use you as the example again, is, you know, I think Rich is high at work, you know, and it causes a bunch of, I use that example in GEO, so Rich, thanks for being a good sport. I don't want that to cause a slippery slope for an employee who may be performing their job, and I think that this is, to your point, a mushy area, and I think mushy areas can create problems for an employer that allows for mushy areas. So I guess as this develops, and I would look to Maury maybe too, to see if there's ways we can firm this up a little bit so that it doesn't, and maybe it intentionally has ambiguity, because that's sometimes how we manage and navigate laws we don't really understand, or rules we don't understand. But I'm just cautious on this, because what I don't want it to be is, well, I think Rich is high, and it's some way for us to performance manage if there's no real performance management, but there's really no way for us to, or there's no proof, right? If Rich has a joint on his desk, well, sorry, like, case closed, but that's not the case.
Ann.
Well, do we have a way to test that rolled piece of paper thing on Richard's desk? But in all seriousness, we don't have that equipment as far as I know. And so just thinking, if going back to the intent, if maybe we want to just take a look at it and take a pause on implementing this, because if we want to have people who are functioning at work, that maybe that's under some other policy, that if someone is not functioning, not able to do their job, I would assume that's in some policy that the supervisor has some recourse, and whether we don't know if they're high, they didn't sleep good, they just got told some bad news, mental health issues. If we don't know what it is, or some other skill thing, if we don't know what it is and someone's not able to perform their job right then, their supervisor should be able to intervene and do something. And maybe it goes back to that, especially since we can't tell. Under this one, like if I said, poor Rich, if I said, he can't perform because and it comes under the cannabis thing, and maybe it doesn't come under that. So just my thoughts.
Red Eye Rich.
Yeah, thank you. But I'm happy to help further the discussion. There is a credential, a drug recognition expert. We had one fully qualified person in the county, our undersheriff. I'm not sure she's still carrying the credential because she's not actually doing patrols. And it's a fairly intensive process to become qualified. We probably should be working to have more people in the county with that credential. But as the discussion has pointed out, determining under the influence of marijuana is a very difficult thing to do. You can carry it in your system for, I believe, up to 30 days after use while not really being under the influence. I will support the resolution because I believe we need a policy. And if we go to page 61, I'd note Section A, employees, interns, volunteers, vendors, contractors, visitors, and/or the members of the public may not consume cannabis while in a county facility or on county property. I'm not so troubled by the language in B because there's different ways you can arrive there. There could be an admission, there could have been observation of use. We will not, for some period of time, have a clear test to connect what might be observed in terms of, oh, we saw them using marijuana to the level of impairment, yet you can infer that, and we do that. And frankly, the alco sensor is measuring a fairly Byzantine route to try to get to something called blood alcohol content through the breath. And there's there's various assumptions that you make, and it's fully accepted in the courts and used. I think we're going to probably get somewhere with marijuana in the next few years because people are working feverishly on trying to figure out how to test for it. In the meantime, I think we can go forward with this policy because we're trying to say don't use it at work. If we know you're using it at work, that can be a reason for discipline or termination. I'm okay with that. Thanks.
Amanda.
Did you want to go?
No, go on.
Okay. I just was thinking as we were talking, like, does every office have a breathalyzer machine that they can, if Greg has been drinking
5 years, haven't had a drink.
and I can smell it on his breath, can I say, Katrina, do we have a breathalyzer? I'm going to test him. We don't. So how do we, I don't have the alcohol policy in front of me, but there's probably something in there that says, how do we determine that? So so there's that. But, I feel like I would be okay, sort of maybe, to take out the sentence that says how the determination is made and then ask our staff to go back and look at that, and maybe there's some better language that we can use under B there. And or in that sentence, a determination of, quote, under the influence or impaired. It says can, but maybe it should say may be established by a professional opinion, ... So those would be two suggestions to change it, or I'm happy to just leave it as well. Because like Rich, I feel like we need to have something passed. We can look at it additionally further as needed.
Shauna.
So I actually agree with Ann in that if someone's not doing their job, that's a separate policy, and we should be using that separate policy. I think, I understand the intent of just to have a policy, but the reality is that this could be someone's job that we're talking about, and they could lose it if someone thinks they're under the influence. And so I don't think this is ready for prime time. You know, I also question the medical cannabis program. I mean, it's a 15-minute online course. Anyone can get their card. You know, I don't even know if you talk to a doctor anymore, but, you know, I understand that some people use the medical marijuana, and I absolutely respect that. But I question the use of supervisors making that call, human resources making that call. I mean, I think we probably need something, but I just don't think this is it.
Travis.
I do agree that we do need a policy, but I don't think it's fair to put that assessment on a supervisor that a person's under the influence. I don't think it's fair to the staff member to have in their file that they were sent home because they were under the influence. Like, that follows you around. If we can't make that assessment, we can't make that assessment. It's one thing to send, I'll use Shauna, I'm not gonna pick on Rich. It's one thing to send Shauna home because she's not performing, or because she's tired, or she's not doing well at work, and ask her to take the rest of the day off. It's one thing to send a staff home and say, look, I could smell alcohol on you, I could smell marijuana on you. You can't be here, or you gotta go home, you gotta clean up, whatever. If you see somebody smoking on the job, I get that too. It's like if you see somebody drinking on the job. But if I have a really bad headache and I'm out of sorts and you just decide that I'm high and that goes into my file, it's not fair. And I can't argue against you, right? So I would vote for it with some more work on what does under the influence mean? What does that look like? Who determines that? Because I don't think it's fair just to throw it out there. I do think we need a policy. I definitely agree on that.
I'm just going to take a turn for a moment. I heard someone sort of suggest this. What if we took out the last sentence in B on packet page 61? Would that get us 99% of the way there? So Veronica next.
So I looked up the alcohol policy, and the alcohol policy, the 2B, the equivalent of this, it just says, employees may not be impaired by the use of alcohol during work hours. And that's it. It doesn't say anything about who makes the determination. It does have the part later in the responsibilities section, just like this potential cannabis policy has, that employees should report any suspected or witnessed violations of this policy to their department head and/or supervisor. I'm not even, it's like almost word for word the same, that section and this and the alcohol policy. So I think that what Dan suggested would, I guess I can't speak to whether it solves the problems, but it would make it be pretty equivalent to the alcohol policy we already have in terms of language around how do you know if someone's impaired.
Okay, I think Amanda was next, then Greg, then Rich.
Yeah, well, can you actually, Veronica, is under the definitions on the alcohol policy, does it have a definition of under the influence?
It does not.
Okay. And then I would just add, to Dan's point, what I suggested about taking that sentence out, I think that would be fine, again, with the ask that staff looks at this again and we can have more discussion at GO about the finer points that everyone's bringing up.
Greg.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to move to amend the policy as provided. And so I'm going to start on packet page 60 with removing under the influence from definitions. And then I'm going to go down to packet page 61 and propose under 2 policy section B we strike under the influence, and then we also strike a determination of under the influence or impaired can be established by professional opinion and/or based on lay observations by a supervisor. So that sentence would then read, employees may not be impaired by the use of cannabis during work hours. Work hours include breaks and periods of being on call, period.
Okay, let's pause for a moment there. Did you get that? Okay, thank you. Is there a second to Greg's amendment? Veronica seconds it. Discussion on the amendment. Shauna.
I mean, I guess what's the point of creating this if you don't have a mechanism to act on your findings? You know, it's like, why make a law if you can't enforce it?
Well, because the enforcement comes under C. Shall be subject to disciplinary actions.
Yeah, but you still don't have a mechanism to find out if someone's impaired or not. I mean, you're taking that out.
I took out under the influence. Impaired is still there because it mirrors the alcohol policy.
Yeah, but you're not stating who can make that claim and who can establish that. I mean, I don't think that would work for me.
Rich.
Yeah, you don't have a definition of impaired as I see it. You have under the influence, but impaired gets added later, so you'd take out the definition and then you'd introduce a term that isn't defined. So I wouldn't support that. I'm okay with taking out the last sentence. I would just say that we had a pretty extensive discussion about this at GO, and there was a recognition by Ruby, our HR director, that you have to really walk very carefully. We need the policy, but until there's really a good testing system, this isn't going to be relied upon. It's going to be behavior-based, but you need to have a clear statement here. I think taking out the last sentence of B addresses what we've been talking about, but I think you still need a definition. Thanks.
Mike Sigler.
So 2 questions. I mean, if one of our people gets in an accident, they're obviously tested. How do they, I mean, I don't know. How do they determine whether the person's, I mean, obviously drunk is easy, or drinking is easy, you know, especially for a CDL, what is it, 0.04, something like that.
You're asking what kind of testing do we do if there's an accident?
Yeah.
Workers' comp.
No, I'm asking.
Lisa, Maury, do you want to?
If one of our bus drivers hits somebody, Maury, I mean.
I can address that. And what happens in that situation under the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Act is the test that's used is whether it's in the blood or urine, and the CDL driver is basically stuck with that. So the federal regulations for drivers don't distinguish between having it in your system and being under the influence. So that, you know, so basically a CDL driver is assumed to be under the influence if they test positive.
So if one of our people got in an accident, which has happened, they would be tested, and yeah, that's probably what the court would go with, and we would be liable if they were.
Right, but
whether they were high or not, it's.
Yeah, those situations are limited to employees who perform safety-sensitive functions as defined in the federal statute. So it's basically drivers, heavy equipment operators, light equipment operators, and so forth, who have their own set of regulations as opposed to, you know, Rich working at a desk.
Mike, are you done with your questioning?
I need a kind of a recap of where we are, because I know that Greg put forward a.
We have an amendment on the floor to take out a few things, which we can specify if you want, from the policy. That's the amendment. Is that good enough for now?
I think so, because I know Rich had a different, well, there was another amendment too.
He didn't move it, though.
All right.
I was just saying I would support part of it, but not all of it.
Okay, I've got Travis, then Shauna.
I was just, to Mike's point, it's not all drivers. To Mike's point, it's not all drivers that would be subject to a test. If you were working for Department of Aging and you got in an accident, you wouldn't be tested. So it's only drivers that have a CD or the accident is suspicious enough to where an officer that arrived on the scene might think, based on what you did, you were under the influence. But it wouldn't be all drivers.
That's correct. That's correct. It's just ones covered by the Motor Carrier Safety Act.
Well, if the accident was serious enough, I mean, I don't know, I would think.
Isn't the question what the county would test?
There are two issues there, I think. One is, as a result of the accident, does supervision say you're going to get a test, we're going to send you for a test, which would be determined with, whether that's appropriate would be determined with reference to the collective bargaining agreement. The other possibility is that there are observations in the police report, which are typically, I don't think after an accident that you can be forced to have a test, but the police officer will make field sobriety observations just as they would with any substance. So it could, they'll interview, they'll ask, have you taken anything? They'll ask about medications, marijuana, and other things.
I get what you're saying, and I get what Travis is saying. Okay, thanks.
Okay, I've got Shauna, and then Greg, and then maybe we can move to a vote on the amendment?
So my question is for Lisa. I know that some workers' comp companies require that if you get injured on the job, you have to go for a drug screening. Does that happen here?
If we're injured, for individuals who are injured on the job.
For a workers' comp claim?
It really depends on the nature of the injury and I think the context around it.
Because obviously having a cannabis policy, if someone was injured on the job, was impaired, went to the hospital, had a drug screening, cannabis came up, alcohol, whatever came up, then I think that would be valid. But, if they're not doing that with workers' comp, then I guess I would question the policy. So.
Greg.
Yeah, my question, or my concern, Rich, to your point with the definition, if you got rid of the word under the influence and put exhaustion, you could read that as demonstrates the loss of normal use of either mental or physical faculties, you know what I mean? Which demonstrate objectively observable indication that the employee's performance of their duties of the position are decreased or lessened. I feel like that could be a bad day for somebody, right? It could be the heat in an air-conditioned-less office. I mean, there's just because it has a definition doesn't mean it's a good one. And that, I think, is my concern.
Mike Lane, did you have your hand up, or did you just saying, please, let's get done?
I was praying that we get it done. Because I don't even know what we're talking about. I know Greg made a motion. Did he get a second to that motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you the loss of normal either?
Okay. So I do have Rich and Veronica on.
I do want to say,
sure.
I went to law school. It's been a while back, but I do not remember any legal corollary discussion about mushy.
What is that?
Slippery slope.
Lisa.
And I want to say, I apologize if I've taken us down this rabbit hole. This was a rabbit hole that we initially internally had when we were discussing this policy about enforcement. But I think to get at the point of the policy, and it's been brought up, I believe Rich brought it up, that now that cannabis is legal in New York State, as is alcohol, we as an employer want to be setting the precedent that just because it's legal doesn't mean that people on the job can be consuming alcohol or can be consuming cannabis. And that there is direct observation of consuming alcohol or consuming cannabis that's very blatant, that we want to say on the books we don't condone as an employer. Getting at is this person under the influence is a really difficult area to try to enforce. But I think we want to at least take this first step of saying, as an employer, we don't condone this in the workplace.
You have 3 more speakers on the list. I'm really hoping we can move to a vote. I'm not sure anyone's mind is changing at this point. Rich.
Yeah, I'll pass.
Veronica.
Well, two things. Maybe one thing, the alcohol policy didn't have a definition of impaired or under the influence or anything, and it looks like it's been in effect for 4 years and change now. How's that going, do you know? Like, has the type of issue we're debating here ever come up?
Not in my recent memory, no.
Has anyone ever been I don't know if I can know this, but if I can, has anyone ever been disciplined per the alcohol policy specifically?
No,
I don't expect you to know that off the top of your head.
No, but I mean, it has come to pass in history with around people who have to drive and have had to be tested, and it's come up in those areas for sure.
I'm then totally comfortable with Greg's idea and striking this definition of impaired and how do you tell from the policy, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the point of this policy is to start like, you know, scanning and checking everyone for possible cannabis use or being high. I think it's so that in the unfortunate and hopefully extremely rare event that you find a coworker or an employee who is like clearly high, or they come back in from a smoke break and they're like, you smell like weed, that you have something to point to say like, this is not allowed, and you don't need to get into a debate about that. I think that's what it's for, and I think it would work perfectly well, the amended version.
Amanda.
Yeah, what Veronica just said, I think I would support this, again, with the caveat that we go back and we define what does under the influence mean for this and the alcohol policy, and then if it works, let's put it back in here so we are clear.
Motion on the floor, which we're about to vote on, is amendment to the main policy, which eliminated the under the influence section and eliminated the last sentence of B on packet page 61, and also the term under the influence in that same section. Everyone understand what we're about to vote on?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. Please keep them up. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, does anyone wish to change their vote? Okay, the motion carries 8-4. The resolution has now been amended. We're now back to the main motion. Veronica, are you questioning the count?
I guess, are there only 12 legislators here total?
Yes.
Okay.
No problem.
Lee and Deb.
Sorry, Deborah's been so long, I forgot. I don't want to say this on the record.
Okay. All right, so we're back to the main motion, back to the policy that's now been amended. Any further discussion? Ready to have a vote on, yeah, Veronica?
I don't have language for this, and I don't want it to be a discussion, but our public commenter pointed out that this policy doesn't mention anything about the harms of cannabis, and I can't speak to the specific stuff he brought up, but I do think it would make sense, I guess, mirroring the smoking policy, if at some point in the future, in the general information section, there was some language about why using cannabis at the workplace would not be a good idea.
Any other discussion? Okay, let's have a vote then. All in favor of Resolution K, the cannabis-free work environment policy, please raise your hands. All opposed? Does anybody wish to change their vote? Okay, that resolution passes 11-1. I just need to acknowledge that we totally blew through our normal 7:30 break. I didn't think that this was going to take so long, so my apologies for that. I didn't check with everybody on that, but I assume you're okay with us finishing up at this point, right? Any last thoughts from or for Government Operations Committee? Okay, thank you. Next up, Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee, Ann Corman, Chair.
All right, thank you, Dan. First, I wanted to mention, since as a follow-up to the heat wave we're having, and due to climate change, we are posed to have more heat issues and heat-related events. Just one of the, in addition to what was already said, to help with the brownouts, because I've been hearing around the county that there have been some brownouts. I think there have been some brownouts here already this week, if I'm correct. And whether they're exactly related to this, I don't know for sure, but typically brownouts are related to an increased use of that particular energy, which in this case is electricity. So one of the things that is recommended to help with that is if you have a smart thermostat, or to get a smart thermostat, I just installed a Nest thermostat. You can also get from NYSERDA rebates to help cover the cost, or part of the cost for a smart thermostat. But anyway, so I just put a Nest thermostat in just because I wanted to have more control and to be able to monitor my energy usage. So I got a notice that came up and said, do you want to participate in NYSERDA's plan where they will give me $70 just for the season, and then if I follow through, I'll get $20 more. So in essence, $90 for the season if they regulate my thermostat a little bit. And you can put in various plans in effect, so they might pre-cool your house for you if it's going to be a hot day. So they'll cool it earlier in the day, so that, and when everybody else is, say, coming home from school or work and turning on their thermostat, your house is already pre-cooled. And so that not only helps with brownouts, but as has been talked about before, especially in the peak committee, about when there's a high energy usage, that's the time that what's called the peaker plants or the backup plants, which are usually fossil fuel plants, they come online, and they just to help fill in that gap there. So I just wanted to suggest that more people sign up for those. And it's actually pretty cool too. If you're hot in the middle of the night, I can just reach for my phone and turn on my air conditioning, or watching TV or something like that. These are all made up examples, but let's see. So we met on June 10th here, and a couple of topics that I wanted to touch on. The resolution we passed regarding the Department of Recycling Materials Management. So we have two decommissioned landfills. I'm a little tired, not under the influence, but a little tired. And so the leachate from these has increased the past year of how many gallons. And as Randy had mentioned before, there's a couple million gallons that come off of these two landfills each year, and the leachate is contaminated effluent, so to speak, that comes off of these. And we have drilled wells, and we have to take that and get that processed somewhere. So the cost to get that processed here in Ithaca went from $12 to $50 a gallon. And so that's why you saw that resolution. And so that's going to be a topic I'm sure we're going to be talking about as the year progresses and as budgeting, because the price has gone up astronomically. And Recycling Materials Management are also looking for a backup place to bring that effluent if they can't bring it to Ithaca for some reason, or if we wanted to look around for different pricing. But probably it's going to cost so much more to bring it to another place, even if it had a better price. That's probably not feasible, but we need to have a backup if for some reason we can't bring it to the Ithaca wastewater treatment plant. From Department of Planning and Sustainability, the department is asking, or has submitted for a funding request from the consolidated funding, which I talked about before, from New York State. This is from the DEC, to help with stream corridor assessment, a flood risk assessment, and this is for the Fall Creek area. So they've asked for a $75,000 grant for that, so hopefully they'll get that. And their department also hired and has onboarded Shauna Stevenson, their new housing and community development planner. So thank you, Shauna. We're glad to have you on board. And let me see if I missed anything. One last thing is for our October meeting, I'm just planning ahead, our October peak meeting is on Indigenous People and Columbus Day, October 14th. So if we can start to discuss that next meeting, to see if we can reschedule that to a different day. So please bring your calendars. And our next meeting is Monday, July 8th at 10 a.m. right here.
Questions or comments for Ann? Randy?
I just wanted to clarify that the Ithaca City wastewater treatment is not per gallon. It's, is it per, I'm not sure it's per 100 or 1,000 gallons, but that'd be a lot more money. But
I was wondering about that. Yeah, I was trying to look up the numbers.
Yeah, I can't, but it's not per gallon. I think it's per 1,000 gallons.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. You're right. Otherwise, that'd be quite a lot. It's per 1,000 gallons. Right. So thanks, Randy.
Any other questions or comments for Ann? Okay, thank you, Ann. Community Recovery Fund Advisory Committee. We are meeting this coming Monday, June 24th at 10:30, and as I've mentioned several times, we're going to be setting some deadlines so that we don't get into this the use it or lose it situation. We don't want to lose it. We don't want to lose the federal money. Any questions or comments about Community Recovery Fund Committee? Okay, next up is the Department of Poetry. No report? No, any individual member filed resolutions? No. Minutes of the previous meeting, June 4th. I'll move that. Randy moves, Ann seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, the minutes carry unanimously. Is there any unfinished business? Okay, we are going to go into executive session shortly in accord with Article 7, Section 105 of the Public Officers Law. Under H, the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property, or the proposed acquisition of securities, or sale or exchange of securities held by such public body, but only when publicity would substantially affect the value thereof. Is there someone that would move to go into executive session? Travis moves, Greg seconds. Any discussion? All in favor of going to executive session? Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned for now. We're going into executive session after we shut the cameras down. Thank you.